Technically speaking, nothing is up, since direction is relative, and therefore changes depending on what frame of reference one makes, or takes an empirical observation from. Thus, anything one observes to be up can, just as easily be observed to be not up, by changing frames of reference. On that note, and by the same branch of logic, one could also posit that everything is up, or at least has the potential to be up given the appropriate reference frame. Therefore, technically speaking, everything is up but also nothing is up. Now at this point, if we apply the logic of categorical syllogisms, it suddenly becomes clear that everything equals nothing. How? Well, if everything is up, and nothing is up, then everything must equal nothing, just like how, if A equals B and C equals B then A equals C. Thus, everything equals nothing, nothing is everything. This brings us to the infamous King Lear, whose most famous quote is arguably this: "Nothing will come of nothing." If we take what we've just learned and replace nothing in that line with the word everything, as is doable, since nothing equals everything as was just proven, then we are left with the proposition that everything will come of everything. This can then be interpreted to mean that one's current state is but an amalgamation of all actions and phenomena that have occurred to that individual in their entire spatial temporal precedent. This shares the same stream of logic as the butterfly effect, which posits that the minutest of changes in the past, say, killing a butterfly, could drastically alter the future. Of course, if the future is altered to such a great degree that the means by which the past would be altered no longer exists, then the future would not be altered. In other words, what we now have is a case akin to the classic grandfather paradox, which holds that one who travels back in time to kill his or her grandfather would then not exist to be able to go back in time to kill his or her grandfather. Thus, it is impossible for one to go back in time to kill their own grandfather. But as an old famous proverb states, there is an exception to everything. Thus, there must be an exception to the inherent universal mechanism which prevents one from going back in time and killing his or her grandfather. That is, unless we take the proverb one step further, it might be supposed that there is an exception to the very notion that everything has an exception. This means that something exists in the universe which doesn't have an exception. This, however, would render the aforementioned proverb moot, since it would no longer hold true as there would no longer be an exception to everything. But if it wasn't true, then the proverb would not have an exception to begin with, and would thus be true again. Thus, we have a quasi-version of a liar paradox, which is what happens when one who only ever lies says this statement is a lie. What all this entails is that every single event, entity, phenomenon, occurrence, and etc. that have existed, currently exists, and will come to exist, is governed by a universal paradox with no resolution. In other words, the universe and beyond is driven on a fundamental level by an impossibility with no reason nor solution. Thus, life and all it entails is effectively meaningless. But hold on for a second. We know that the answer to the question, what is the answer to life, the universe and everything, is 42. It literally is. Google it if you don't believe me. No, seriously, type what is the answer to life, the universe and everything into Google and see what happens. Thus, we can reorganize everything we've covered thus far into the following formula: life plus universe plus everything equals 42. Now, we know that everything equals nothing, or in other terms 0. Thus, the formula now becomes life plus universe plus 0 equals 42, which is reducible to life plus universe equals 42. Now, as we have found to be the case, life is meaningless. However, meaninglessness does not necessarily entail or equal 0, since 0 is significant in certain cases. For example, for ratio variables, 0 is significant, since it indicates a clear and distinct notion or phenomenon. Thus, life must be either a nominal, ordinal, or interval variable. I would like to posit that life is in fact an interval variable, since it can be systematically articulated with numerical values and the difference between two of its values is non-arbitrary. But hold on. Life can't be an interval variable, since such variables can go into negative values whereas life cannot. After all, one cannot live for a negative number of years. Thus, if life couldn't be any of the 4 types of variables, then life couldn't be a variable at all. But if life exists and can't be a variable, that can only mean that life is impossible. Thus, life can only be represented by an impossible number, that is a number that could never be. Now, while it might seem difficult to locate such a number, such an endeavor would not at all be a challenge. Why? Because we know from Futurama that there's no such thing as 2. Thus, 2 is an impossible number. Going back to our formula, it now becomes 2 plus universe equals 42. Of course, by simple subtraction, we can deduce that the universe is equal to 40. But what does this mean? Well, we know that 40 is the same as 2 score. Now, a score of 2 in golf is a double bogey, which when you rearrange the letters spells blue gooey dub. Now, what could that mean? Well, of course, blue gooey is basically another way of saying cheesy. Ick now, because blue cheese is very blue and gooey, as in, we are looking for a really cheesy dub. The cheesiest dubs has got to be English dubdonym. Bring it all together and this apparently means that the universe is English dubdonym. Sounds horrific, right? Well, worry not because there's more to it than meets the eye. To say that the universe is English dubbed anim is to say that 1/3 of the universe is English, another 1/3 is dubbed, and the final 1/3 is anim. Mathematically speaking, and based on personal empirical observation, this is actually quite accurate. However, beyond that, what this shows us is that the universe is evenly divisible by 3. Now, all values that are evenly divisible by 3 are such that the sum of their individualized values are also evenly divisible by 3. For example, since 324 is divisible by 3, result is 108. We know that 3 plus 2 plus 4 is also divisible by 3, result is 3. But hold on, didn't we find that the universe is 40? 40 is definitely not divisible by 3, since 4 plus 0 divided by 3 is 1.333. So what does this mean? Well, it means that, by the confines of strict existential logic, 1.333 must be a whole number. However, if 1.333 is a whole number, then that means that all decimal numbers are henceforth whole numbers. Thus, we need to get rid of the decimal, otherwise known as a dot. The easiest way to do this is to create a mirror image. However, so as to not create something out of nothing, we need to create a mirror image for that mirror image, so the net creation is still 0 and the law of conservation is not violated. Of course, the second mirroring would need to be in a different direction from the first or else the whole thing would be pointless. Now, the horizontal mirror of dot is top and the vertical mirror of top is top. We can cancel out dot and top to get rid of the decimal problem and finally balance out the equation. However, we are now left with top. Well, top is incidentally divisible by 3 as well, and the result is a single letter, that is, one letter. The word 1 can be rearranged into near, which basically means that top divided by 3 results in a near letter, or a new letter, since near is defined as new. New letter? Well, the newest letter in the English alphabet is G now. J is obviously a reference to jay, which is a type of bird. And what do birds do? They fly, of course. And when birds fly, they flap their wings up and down. So does that not mean that up plus down equals wings? Oh, we are getting close now. Well, assuming that up equals the negative of down, which makes sense, since combining up with down results in motionlessness, the equation becomes up equals wings. In other words, wings equals 0. No wings means no flight, or for that matter, no going into the air at all. And you know who shouldn't ever go into the air? Tina, because her passive lets her deal chase damage while she's on the ground. But hold on, we are not done yet. Have you forgotten? Up equals wings, and as such there are no ups left. Thus, Tina is actually not up. So if Tina isn't up, then her rival character from the Black Lambs must be up. C here has Natter, J has Harpy, and Teen has Levia. This leaves just Yuri and Sulby. I'd say Sulby would be a good match for Violet, since they both use bladed weapons and take on a leader type role. Thus, Tina's rival is Yuri. So does this mean that Yuri's up?